Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time. Not to a grand palace or a heroic battlefield, but into the shoes of someone often overlooked, yet tragically central to the grand narrative of ancient Greece. Tonight, you're going to experience what being a slave in ancient Greece was really like. Imagine the blinding Mediterranean sun, the dusty roads underfoot, the scent of olive groves carried on a gentle breeze. But this idyllic picture is not yours to fully enjoy. Your world is one of obligation, of silent endurance, of a life dictated by others. You might hear the distant murmur of philosophers debating democracy, or the roar of a crowd at the Olympic Games. But these sounds are just background noise to your daily struggle. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive long under these conditions. Most people wouldn't. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is, so we can embark on this journey together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey into servitude in ancient Greece could begin in a myriad of ways, each as arbitrary and devastating as the last. You might have been born into it, your mother a slave, instantly sealing your fate from your very first breath. This was a common historical fact. Indeed, the most common way to become enslaved. If your mother was enslaved, so were you. And any children you might have. You are born, and immediately you are someone else's property, without a say in your destiny. No childhood dreams of becoming a sculptor or a soldier for you. Your path is already set, a predetermined track laid out by the circumstances of your birth. You are simply another asset, part of the master's household inventory. This lineage of bondage that passing down through generations created entire families and communities of enslaved people, their lives intertwined with the fortunes of their owners. Perhaps your unfortunate journey began on the battlefield. You were a soldier, brave or terrified. It mattered little now. Your city-state went to war, perhaps against Sparta or Corinth, or even a distant Persian foe. You fought, you bled, but ultimately your side lost. And as the dust settled, as the victorious hoplites marched through your defeated ranks, you found yourself among the captives. Shackled, disarmed, stripped of your armor and your identity as a free citizen, you were now a trophy of war. Your life was spared. Yes, but your freedom was irrevocably forfeit. You, a proud warrior, were now a commodity, destined for the slave markets of Athens or Delphi. This method of enslavement was a grim reality of ancient warfare. You simply became the spoils of victory, an unfortunate consequence of your nation's defeat. Historians still debate whether prisoners of war were always enslaved or if ransom was a more common option in certain periods. But for you, the chains are already binding. Or maybe. Your tragedy began with something as simple, yet as ruinous as debt. You were a farmer, perhaps a craftsman or a merchant. A bad harvest? A failed business venture? A sudden illness in the family? Any of these could plunge you into an inescapable spiral. You borrowed money, perhaps from a wealthy neighbor or a shrewd lender, promising repayment. But the gods were not smiling, and the debt grew, compounding, until you had nothing left to offer. No land, no tools, no possessions. In desperate times, particularly in the early periods of Greek history before certain reforms, you might have even offered yourself or your family members as collateral. And when the debt couldn't be repaid, the inevitable happened. You became enslaved. This was known as debt bondage, a harsh system where economic misfortune could swiftly transform a free individual into property. While reforms in Athens eventually outlawed debt slavery for its citizens, for those outside the city or in earlier eras, it remained a looming threat. Consider also the chilling prospect of kidnapping or piracy. You could be sailing the sparkling Aegean Sea, a free merchant or a curious traveler, enjoying the salty air and the promise of distant shores. Then, without warning, a fast-moving trireme, its oars cutting through the waves with predatory precision. Would appear, rough hands would drag you aboard, your pleas ignored, your struggles futile. You would be bound, gagged, and thrown into the dark hold, sharing the terror with others who shared your fate. Pirates thrived in the ancient world, their illicit trade fueled by the demand for human chattel. You could be snatched from a coastal village, sold by unscrupulous traders, or betrayed by someone you trusted. This was a brutal, random lottery of misfortune, where a single encounter could irrevocably alter the course of your life. Imagine the terror, the sheer bewilderment as you realize your entire world has just been violently ripped away. Your freedom, your identity, your very existence as an individual is now gone. Even the legal system, meant to uphold justice, could be a pathway to your enslavement. If you were found guilty of certain crimes, especially those considered heinous or disruptive to the social order, your punishment might not be imprisonment, but bondage. Perhaps you committed theft, or perhaps you were caught engaging in some illicit activity. Instead of a fine or a period of exile, the court, in its wisdom, could decide that your labor, your very being, would serve the community or an individual as compensation. You would then be sold, your body and your time becoming the property of someone else, a living sentence for your transgressions. This served a dual purpose. It punished the offender and provided a source of labor for the state or for private citizens. It's a sobering thought, isn't it, that your legal standing could degrade so utterly that justice, as defined by ancient Greek standards, could lead you to such a profound loss of self. So, your new reality is stark. You are a doulos, a slave. The very word means one who is bound. You are not merely a servant, you are property, a living tool. You have no legal rights, no independent will, no personal possessions beyond what your master might generously grant you. Your clothes are coarse and simple, your food barely enough to sustain you through arduous labor. Your body is no longer your own. Your time is no longer your own. Your future is no longer your own. This fundamental loss of agency is the defining characteristic of your existence. This is where the paradox of ancient Greek society truly emerges. A paradox that might make you chuckle darkly if you weren't so utterly devoid of mirth. This was a civilization that gave us democracy, philosophy, magnificent art, and the very concept of individual freedom for its citizens. Yet, its foundations were built on the backs of millions of enslaved people. In Athens, a beacon of democratic ideals. Historians estimate that enslaved individuals might have constituted 1/3, or even more, of the total population. Think about that for a moment, a society priding itself on the freedom of its citizens, while simultaneously holding vast numbers of people in brutal bondage. It's an inconvenient truth, often glossed over in romanticized portrayals of antiquity, isn't it? It's like building a magnificent temple, but having its very foundation rest on the backs of invisible, suffering people. Your new life, irrespective of how you arrived at it, is now characterized by relentless labor. Your daily routine is dictated by the sun and the whims of your master. There are no weekends, no holidays, no time for personal pursuits. Your body is a tool, meant to work until exhaustion, and then to rest just enough to work again. Sleep is a necessity, not a luxury, often taken on hard floors, in cramped quarters, or exposed to the elements. You might find yourself working in the fields, under the merciless gaze of the sun. The scorching heat beats down on your bare back, turning your skin to cracked leather. Your hands, once perhaps soft or skilled in another trade, are now calloused and bleeding from endless hours of tilling the soil, harvesting olives, or tending to grapevines. You taste the dust on your tongue, feel the grit in your eyes, and the constant ache in your muscles. The rhythm of your life is the swing of the hoe, the pull of the plow, the repetitive motion of manual labor. You are fed meager rations, just enough to keep you going, and often denied water when the sun is at its zenith. The overseer, often another enslaved person granted slightly more authority, watches you with a whip, his presence a constant reminder of your precarious position. There's no escaping the sun, no escaping the sweat, and certainly no escaping the unending toil. Or perhaps your fate is even grimmer, the silver mines of Lorium, a place where life was often short and brutal. Imagine descending into the dark, suffocating tunnels, the air thick with dust and the metallic tang of ore. The flickering oil lamp casts dancing shadows, illuminating the cramped spaces where you must crawl, hack, and chisel at the rock face. The work is relentless, the air stale, and the danger ever present. Cave-ins are a constant threat, and the dust fills your lungs, slowly suffocating you from the inside out. You work naked, stripped of even the dignity of clothes, your body exposed to the sharp edges of the rock. Your only companions are the rhythmic clang of picks and the muffled coughs of your fellow unfortunates. The overseers here are particularly ruthless, driving you to the edge of endurance. Many do not last long in the mines. Death is a common, almost welcome, release. An interesting, if macabre, detail is that the conditions in these mines were so horrific that even some free citizens could state that when facing extreme poverty, would consider hiring themselves out as temporary laborers in mines. A desperate measure that often led to early demise. Your life, regardless of the specific task, is now stripped of personal agency. You cannot marry without your master's permission, and even then, your spouse and children remain property. Your relationships are fragile, subject to the whims of your owner who might decide to sell off a loved one at any moment. Your children are not yours to raise as you see fit. They are merely extensions of your master's property. This constant threat of separation, of having your familial bonds brutally severed, hangs over you like a perpetual storm cloud. You learn to guard your emotions, to keep a stoic facade, for openly displayed sorrow might only invite further hardship. It's a cruel twist, isn't it? To be denied the most fundamental human connections, the very bedrock of a fulfilling life? You are truly alone, even when surrounded by others. This fundamental lack of rights extends to every facet of your being. You cannot own property. You cannot testify in court against a free citizen, though you could be tortured to extract testimony. And you cannot participate in the political life of the city. The grand democratic assemblies of Athens, where citizens debated laws and policies, are utterly meaningless to you. You are outside the system, a tool upon which the system operates. You are merely an object, albeit a living one, to be bought, sold, rented out, or bequeathed in a will. Your name, if you even have one beyond a simple descriptor, is likely not the one you were born with. You might be called by a nickname, or a reference to your place of origin, or simply boy or girl. Your personal history, your lineage, your unique identity, all these are erased, replaced by the simple, brutal fact of your servitude. It's a chilling thought to have your very essence, your selfhood, systematically dismantled. And perhaps that is the cruelest joke of all, that in a society so obsessed with philosophy and the human condition, your condition is rendered utterly inhuman. You've just been thrust into the brutal reality of ancient Greek slavery, your freedom extinguished, your future uncertain. Now your very person is on display, an item for sale in the bustling, chaotic human market. This wasn't some back alley transaction. Slave markets were a common feature of major Greek cities like Athens, Corinth, and the island of Delos, which was particularly famous for its massive slave trade. Imagine standing on a raised platform, perhaps a simple wooden block, or even a more elaborate stage, exposed to the elements and the scrutiny of potential buyers. The air is thick with the dust kicked up by countless sandals, the pungent scent of unwashed bodies, and the nervous sweat of others like you. You can hear the clamor of voices, the sharp cries of auctioneers, the low murmurs of haggling, and the occasional whinny of a horse or the bleating of a goat from nearby animal markets. It's a symphony of commerce, and you are its most vulnerable note. Your body is your only asset. and it is meticulously inspected. Buyers, both men and women, wealthy citizens and opportunistic merchants, will circle you, appraising you with a cold, calculating gaze, much like one might examine a horse or a piece of pottery. They'll prod your limbs, check your teeth, ask you to walk, perhaps even to lift something heavy. Your physical strength, your perceived health, your age, and your general demeanor are all assessed. A strong back, unblemished skin, and a docile expression are highly valued. Any sign of defiance, illness, or weakness could drastically reduce your price, or even lead to you being passed over entirely. You try to keep your face impassive, your eyes downcast, betraying no emotion. You know that even a flicker of fear or anger could mean a harsher fate. It's a curious parallel, isn't it, to modern-day livestock auctions? Stripped of all humanity, it really makes you wonder about the price tags we put on things. Your origin plays a significant role in your perceived value. If you are from a renowned warrior culture, like Thrace or Scythia, you might be seen as suitable for heavy labor or even as a bodyguard. If you are from a region known for its intellectual prowess, like Ionia or some parts of Asia Minor, you might fetch a higher price as a domestic servant, a teacher, or a scribe. The more civilized your origin, the more likely you are to be seen as adaptable to household tasks, potentially earning you a slightly less brutal existence than, say, a mine worker. You hear snippets of conversations in various dialects, buyers discussing the merits of a well-built Thracian or a clever Ionian girl. You are reduced to a label, a stereotype based solely on your birthplace. Your clothes are rudimentary, perhaps just a simple tunic or coarse wrap, revealing just enough to allow inspection but nothing to hide potential flaws. You might be given a sign around your neck, or a tag on your wrist, detailing your age, origin, and any particular skills you possess. Male, 25, Thracian, strong. It might read, or female, 18 Ionian, skilled in weaving. This branding is a stark reminder of your new identity. You are no longer a person, but an item on a manifest. You learn very quickly that resistance, even a subtle glare, is futile. A quick lash from a supervisor's whip, a sharp shove from a guard. These are swift lessons in compliance. Once a price is agreed upon, the transaction is swift, impersonal. Coins clink. A deed of sale is exchanged, and suddenly, you belong to someone new. You are led away, often by the arm or by a rope, your new master's intentions unknown. Your previous life, your family, your name, all are left behind on that dusty platform, swallowed by the ceaseless clamor of the market. This is your brand new reality. You are now someone's property, their chattel, subject to their every command. It's a jarring shift from being a part of a community, however humble, to being utterly alone in a new, terrifying world. The person who buys you could be anyone. A wealthy Athenian citizen needing household staff, a farmer requiring extra hands for his fields, a craftsman looking for an apprentice or a laborer for his workshop, a mine owner always in need of cheap, expendable manpower, or even the state itself, which owned many enslaved people who worked on public projects, building temples or roads. Your fate for the immediate future rests entirely in the hands of this new stranger. Will they be cruel, indifferent, or, in rare cases, perhaps even benevolent? The uncertainty is a heavy burden, a constant knot in your stomach. Historians still debate the proportion of privately owned versus publicly owned enslaved people in different city-states, and how their conditions might have varied. But for you standing there, these academic nuances are irrelevant. As you are led away from the market, the sounds of the city re-emerge, but now you hear them differently. The bustling streets, the vibrant agora where citizens debated and traded, the imposing temples. They are no longer merely impressive structures. They are monuments built, in part, by the unseen labor of people like you. You might catch a glimpse of free citizens strolling casually, laughing, discussing philosophy, seemingly oblivious to the human suffering that underpins their comfortable lives. Their freedom, their leisure, is built on your bondage. It's a bitter irony that stings more than any lash. This contrast between the celebrated freedom of Greek citizens and the pervasive reality of slavery is something you'll come to understand intimately. Your new life begins at your new master's household. You are stripped, washed often roughly, and given new, simpler clothing. Your old clothes, perhaps the last tangible link to your past, are discarded. Your old name, if you insisted on using it, is dismissed, replaced by a new one, often a generic name like Manes or Philemon for males, or Dionysia or Eutychia for females, regardless of your birth name. Or you might simply be called by your origin, the Thracian or the Syrian. This renaming is a symbolic erasure, a final severing of your previous identity. You are now an anonymous cog in your master's machinery. One might consider it an ancient version of a corporate HR orientation, but with significantly less dignity and no benefits package. Obviously, your position within the household depends on your master's needs and your perceived abilities. If you are deemed strong and capable, you might be sent to work in the fields alongside other agricultural slaves. You would rise with the sun, toil until dusk. Your days a monotonous cycle of planting, weeding, harvesting. The food would be coarse, barley bread, olives, dried fish, just enough to sustain your physical output. Water would be rationed. Your sleeping quarters would be rudimentary, perhaps a straw mat in a communal hut, or even a corner of the stable. Your body aches constantly. Your hands are calloused, and the sun bakes your skin. You are literally a beast of burden, valued only for your capacity to labor. This agricultural slavery was particularly prevalent in fertile regions and on large estates. If you possess a more refined skill, perhaps as a cook, a weaver, a scribe, or a tutor, your life might be slightly less physically demanding, but no less bound. You would work within the confines of the master's house, a domestic slave. Your duties would be endless: preparing meals, cleaning, fetching water, weaving clothes, attending to your master's children, or even serving as a companion. You would always be on call, your rest periods brief and interrupted. The constant proximity to your master and his family means a different kind of pressure. The pressure of constant surveillance. The need to anticipate every whim. To remain invisible yet indispensable. Your every move is watched. Your every word potentially scrutinized. A minor mistake could lead to harsh punishment, a public beating, or even sale. Even more skilled. Perhaps you are an artisan, a potter, a stonemason, a metal worker. You would work in your master's workshop, producing goods for sale. Your master profits from your labor, while you receive only your basic sustenance. You might even supervise other enslaved people, or train apprentices, yet you remain enslaved yourself. Your skill is recognized, perhaps even admired, but it does not buy you freedom. It simply makes you a more valuable asset to your owner. This particular form of skilled slavery was economically crucial for many Greek city-states, contributing significantly to their crafts and industries. The irony is not lost on you. A craftsman, creating beauty while living in chains? The hierarchy among enslaved people is also a harsh reality. The domestic slaves often look down upon those who work in the fields, or worse, the mines. Within the household, a supervisor or a trusted slave might have slightly more privileges or better living conditions. But they are still enslaved, and their authority over others comes with its own burden of cruelty and complicity. This internal stratification, carefully cultivated by masters, often serves to prevent collective resistance. You learn quickly where you stand in this unspoken pecking order, and who to avoid. Your days blur into a monotonous cycle of work, eat, and sleep. There is little joy, few moments of genuine rest or personal fulfillment. The fear of punishment is a constant companion. Beatings, deprivation of food, or even torture are legitimate disciplinary tools. There are no laws protecting you from your master's arbitrary cruelty, only the occasional social convention that might discourage excessive brutality to preserve your value. But ultimately, you are property, and a master can do what he wishes with his own. Your body, your strength, your very existence are not your own. They belong to another. This is the unvarnished truth of your existence now. You've been bought, renamed, and stripped of your former identity. Now your new reality unfolds within the confines of your master's household, a world both intimate and utterly alien. This is where many enslaved individuals found themselves, performing the endless, often invisible tasks that kept the Greek citizen's life running smoothly. Your days now belong entirely to the rhythm of the household, a stark contrast to the freedom you once knew. Imagine waking before dawn, not by an alarm clock, but by the first pale sliver of light filtering through a small window, or perhaps by the low murmur of your master stirring. Your sleeping quarters might be a small, unheated room in the back of the house, a corner in the kitchen, or even a mat laid in a communal area shared with other household slaves. Privacy is a luxury you no longer possess. The air is often cool and damp in the early hours, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke or last night's cooking. You push aside your rough wool blanket, its scratchiness a familiar irritation against your skin, and the day begins. Your first duties are often centered around the morning ritual of your master and his family. You might fetch water from the public fountain, a journey that often means carrying heavy amphorae back to the house, the clay cold and rough against your hands. The water is used for morning ablutions, for cooking, and for watering the small household garden. You quickly learn to navigate the narrow, often crowded streets, your senses sharpened by the need to avoid bumping into free citizens or drawing unwanted attention. The early morning street smells of stale wine, fresh bread from the baker, and the damp earth after a night's dew. You see other enslaved people on similar errands, their faces as resigned as yours, a silent camaraderie born of shared circumstances. Next, you might be tending to the morning meal for the master's family. This would be a simple breakfast of bread dipped in wine, olives, or dried figs. Your task is to prepare these staples, perhaps grinding barley for flour, or fetching fresh produce from the market. The kitchen is a place of constant activity, the air thick with the aroma of wood smoke from the hearth, the earthy scent of vegetables, and the sometimes sharp tang of fermented fish sauce or garum. Your hands become adept at kneading dough, chopping vegetables, and keeping the cooking fire stoked. You eat what is left over, if anything, or simple rations provided by the master, usually coarse barley bread and perhaps some lentils. It's enough to survive, but rarely to feel truly sated. The bulk of your day is dedicated to a ceaseless round of chores. You sweep the dirt floors, careful to avoid raising too much dust. You clean the household's pottery and bronze utensils, polishing them until they gleam. Laundry is a laborious process, involving pounding coarse linen garments in water with lye or ash, then hanging them to dry in the sun. The weight of the wet cloth strains your arms, and the rough texture chafes your skin. You fetch and carry endlessly. Perhaps you carry messages for your master, hurrying through the labyrinthine streets, trying to remember every detail of his instructions, or you might attend to his needs, bringing him his writing tablets, his cloak, or a fresh goblet of wine. You are a silent, ever-present shadow, anticipating every desire before it's even voiced. It's like being an ancient Greek personal assistant, only without the standing desk, ergonomic chair, or ability to say no. That's outside my job description. Which, let's be honest, would be a dream come true for anyone with a bad boss. Privacy is a concept that simply does not exist for you. You live and work in close quarters with your master's family and other enslaved people. Your conversations are guarded, your emotions suppressed. You learn to read faces, to interpret nuances in tone, to anticipate moods. A master's sudden frown, a mistress's sharp glance, these are signals you learn to heed instantly for your well-being. Even your very survival depends on your ability to avoid their displeasure. You might yearn for a moment of solitude, a chance to simply be without being observed. But such moments are rare, almost non-existent. Even your dreams, if you dare to have them, are often haunted by the day's toil. The treatment you receive can vary wildly, a testament to the arbitrary nature of your bondage. Some masters might be relatively lenient, treating their household slaves with a degree of indifference, seeing them merely as tools, but not actively seeking to inflict pain. Others might be capriciously cruel, prone to fits of rage, physical violence, or arbitrary punishments. You might endure beatings for minor infractions, be deprived of food for perceived laziness, or be threatened with sale to a harsher owner, or worse, to the mines. The threat of violence is always present, a thin thread upon which your life hangs. You live in a constant state of low-level anxiety, always on guard, always aware of the precariousness of your existence. This variability in treatment is a peculiar aspect of ancient Greek slavery. Scholars still debate the extent of truly humane treatment for enslaved people, with most agreeing that humane in ancient Greece meant merely not excessively brutal, as the ultimate power imbalance remained. While there were no universal laws protecting you from your master's whims, social norms sometimes discouraged extreme cruelty, as it could signal instability or a lack of self-control in the master. But these norms were fragile, easily broken. You learn that your best defense is often invisibility, efficiency, and a stoic demeanor. If you are a female slave, your duties might also include tending to the mistress and her children. This could involve dressing her, styling her hair, accompanying her on visits, or spinning and weaving wool for the family's clothes. You might also be entrusted with the care of the master's children, acting as a nursemaid or even a tutor if you possess literacy. This proximity to the children can create complex bonds, a strange mix of affection and resentment, knowing that the child you nurture will one day be your owner, or the owner of your own children. For female slaves, there is also the constant threat of sexual exploitation by the master or his sons, a horrific reality that offers no legal recourse or protection. The vulnerability is profound, the powerlessness absolute. Your social interactions, even within the household, are carefully managed. You may form bonds with other enslaved people, a silent network of shared suffering and small acts of kindness, a whispered word of encouragement, a shared morsel of food, a knowing glance. These are precious moments of human connection that offer fleeting respite from your isolation. You might share stories of your former lives, clinging to the fragments of memory that define who you once were. But these relationships are always fragile, subject to your master's decisions. A friend could be sold, a loved one sent away, with no warning and no chance for farewell. Imagine your master is holding a symposium, a drinking party for his male friends. Your role is to serve, silently pouring wine, offering food, cleaning up spills. You stand in the background, a silent observer to their boisterous conversations, their philosophical debates, their raucous laughter. You hear discussions about freedom, about justice, about the ideal state, all while you, a living embodiment of the antithesis of these ideals, stand just meters away, utterly unheard and unseen. The irony is sharp, isn't it? To witness the very concepts of liberty debated while living in absolute bondage. You might even hear jokes at your expense or crude remarks about other enslaved people. The laughter ringing hollow in your ears. You are there, yet you are not. You are a prop in their grand play of intellectual and social superiority. It's almost like being a waiter at a highly pretentious, ancient Greek stand-up comedy show where the audience doesn't realize you're the punchline. Even your leisure, if it can be called that, is limited and controlled. Perhaps on a rare festival day, you might be allowed a few hours of rest, or even a small allowance to spend at the market. But even then, your status is clear. You are always under the watchful eye of society, marked by your simple clothing, your demeanor, your very lack of freedom. There's no true escape, no moment where you can completely shed the chains of your servitude. Your legal status, or rather, Your utter lack thereof is perhaps the most defining aspect of your daily life. You cannot own property, cannot enter into contracts, and cannot marry legally. Your master has the right to punish you, even to kill you. Though extreme violence might draw social disapproval, you are considered property, a chattel, just like a piece of furniture or an animal. If you are harmed by someone other than your master, it is considered damage to your master's property, not an assault on your person. Justice for you is entirely mediated through your owner. If you are abused by an outsider, your master might seek compensation for his damaged property, not for your suffering. It's a sobering thought that your very existence as a human being is fundamentally denied by the legal framework of the land. You have no voice, no rights, no recourse. This systemic dehumanization is woven into the very fabric of ancient Greek society, a quiet hum of injustice beneath the celebrated melodies of democracy and philosophy. You've learned the harsh rhythm of a domestic slave's life, every waking hour dedicated to the needs of your master's household. But your days within the confines of the house, though arduous and without respite, might suddenly shift. Perhaps your master's fortunes change. He acquires new land, or decides to invest in a mining operation. Your value could be reassessed, your body deemed more useful for brute force than for delicate household tasks. Or, in a cruel twist of fate, you might commit some infraction, minor or imagined, and being sent to the fields, or worse, the mines, becomes your swift and terrifying punishment. The transition is abrupt, terrifying, a brutal jolt from one form of bondage to another, often much harsher. You are simply moved, like a piece of furniture, from one room of suffering to a deeper, darker one. If your new reality is the fields, prepare yourself for a world defined by the raw, unfiltered power of the sun. You wake before dawn, not to the gentle stirrings of a household, but to the harsh cry of an overseer, his voice cutting through the pre-dawn chill. Your sleeping quarters are basic, often a communal barrack shared with dozens of other agricultural slaves, packed together on straw mats. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth, unwashed bodies, and the distant, ever-present smell of manure. Your body, already tired from the previous day's toil, aches with a deep, persistent throb. You are marched out to the vast, open fields, a landscape that seems to stretch endlessly under the widening canvas of the sky. The soil, once cool and yielding under your bare feet, quickly heats up as the sun climbs higher, baking the earth into a cracked, unforgiving surface. The scorching heat beats down on your bare back, or through your thin tunic, turning your skin to cracked leather within weeks. You taste the dust on your tongue, feel the grit in your eyes, and the constant gnawing ache in your muscles intensifies with every swing of the hoe, every pull of the plow. The tools are simple, rudimentary: a heavy hoe, a sharp sickle. Or perhaps you are yoked alongside oxen, your own strength supplementing theirs as you drag a wooden plow through stubborn soil. The rhythm of your life becomes the relentless, repetitive motion of manual labor planting seeds in neat rows, weeding out stubborn invasives under a relentless sun, or harvesting olives, grapes, or grain until your fingers are raw and bleeding. There's no escaping the sun, no escaping the sweat, and certainly no escaping the unending toil. The food is coarse and meager, usually barley gruel, a handful of olives, perhaps some dried fish if you are lucky. It's just enough to sustain your physical output, to keep your body moving, but rarely enough to feel truly sated. Water is rationed, especially during the hottest parts of the day, forcing you to endure a constant, parched thirst that makes your throat burn. You learn to conserve every drop of sweat, to limit every unnecessary movement. The overseer, often another enslaved person granted slightly more authority, watches you with a whip at his side. The whip, sometimes a stinging lash, but more often a cracking sound in the air, serves as a constant reminder of your precarious position, a brutal rhythm section for the symphony of your suffering. His presence is a cold, indifferent eye, ensuring no moment is wasted, no effort spared. You realize that ancient farmers weren't just working the land, they were the land. Or at least extensions of it, bound to its seasons and its unyielding demands. If only there were ancient Greek unions to negotiate for better working conditions. Right. No lunch breaks, no overtime pay, just more sun. More. Your days blur into a monotonous cycle of work, eat, and sleep. There are no weekends, no holidays, no time for personal pursuits. Your body is a tool, meant to work until exhaustion, and then to rest just enough to work again. Sleep is a necessity, not a luxury, often taken on hard, uneven floors, in cramped, unventilated huts, or exposed to the cool night air. You might hear the distant cries of night animals, or the soft whispers of other enslaved people, murmuring about their past lives, or dreaming of a freedom that feels impossibly far away. But even these moments of shared misery are brief, quickly swallowed by the demands of another dawn. But perhaps your fate is even grimmer the silver mines of Laurium. In Attica, a place where life was often short, brutal, and devoid of light. Imagine being led, perhaps in chains, to the entrance of a dark, gaping hole in the earth. The air, even at the entrance, is immediately thick and heavy with dust, tinged with the metallic tang of ore and the suffocating scent of stale air. You descend into absolute darkness, the only light coming from small, sputtering oil lamps carried by guards, casting grotesque, dancing shadows on the rough-hewn rock walls. The claustrophobia is immediate and overwhelming, the weight of the earth pressing in on you from all sides. The tunnels are cramped, narrow, forcing you to crawl on your hands and knees through muddy, uneven passages. The work is relentless hacking, chiseling and prying at the rock face with rudimentary picks and hammers. The rhythmic clang of metal against stone reverberates through the tunnels, a deafening accompaniment to your toil. The air is filled with fine, choking dust that fills your lungs with every breath, slowly suffocating you from the inside out. Your coughs, and those of your fellow unfortunates, are muffled, weak sounds swallowed by the oppressive silence of the earth. Cave-ins are a constant, terrifying threat, a sudden rumble from above that could bury you alive in an instant. The damp cold seeps into your bones, chilling you to the core. You work naked or in the barest loincloths. Stripped of even the dignity of clothes, your body exposed to the sharp edges of the rock, the abrasive dust, and the biting cold. Your only companions are the rhythmic clang of picks and the heavy breathing of your fellow enslaved workers. There's no natural light, no fresh air, no sense of time beyond the alternating shifts of darkness and the brief moments you spend above ground for meager food and a few hours of sleep. The overseers in the mines are particularly ruthless, often non-Greek or ex-convicts themselves, granted absolute authority and driven by the need to meet quotas. They carry whips, not just for rhythm, but for constant, brutal enforcement, pushing you to the very edge of endurance, beyond what you thought possible. Many do not last long in the mines. Death from exhaustion, disease, or accidents is a common, almost welcome, release. It really makes you appreciate modern safety regulations, doesn't it? No hard hats, no safety goggles, just existential dread and a pickaxe. This particular form of labor in the silver mines of Laurium was infamous for its horrific conditions. The exact mortality rates in these mines are still a point of significant academic discussion among historians, with estimates varying wildly based on fragmented sources and archaeological findings. However, there is undeniable consensus that the conditions were undeniably grim, leading to extremely short lifespans for those condemned to this fate. It's a sobering thought that some free citizens, when facing extreme poverty, would consider hiring themselves out as temporary laborers in these very mines, a desperate measure that often led to an early demise. They understood the risks, but the alternative was starvation. You, however, had no choice. Your body is simply a machine for output, a tool to be used until it breaks. Whether under the relentless sun of the fields or in the suffocating darkness of the mines, your existence is stripped of personal agency, dignity, and hope. Your pain is irrelevant, only your productivity matters. You are nothing more than a living, breathing commodity, consumed by the relentless machinery of ancient Greek society. The constant ache in your muscles, the lingering cough in your chest, the dull throb behind your eyes. These are the silent companions of your days. You learn to live with them, to endure them. For there is no escape but death. You've endured the sun-baked fields, perhaps even the suffocating darkness of the mines. Your body has become a tool, a mere instrument of labor. But what if your hands, rather than being simply strong, were exceptionally skilled? What if your mind, rather than being dulled by repetitive toil, possessed a rare talent? Even then, in ancient Greece, such gifts didn't buy you freedom, only a different kind of servitude, sometimes even more psychologically binding than the physical chains. Your talent, now your master's asset, becomes your gilded cage. Imagine you possess a rare skill. Perhaps you are a master potter, your fingers shaping clay with an intuitive grace, transforming mere earth into exquisite amphorae, delicate kylix cups, or sturdy storage jars. The scent of damp clay is perpetually on your hands, under your nails, and the heat of the kiln is a familiar embrace. You work in your master's busy workshop, surrounded by other potters, some free, some enslaved, but none possessing your innate artistry. You hear the rhythmic whir of the potter's wheel, the gentle clinking of finished wares, the chatter of apprentices. Your master, a shrewd businessman, understands your value. He knows your touch can command higher prices, that your unique glazes and intricate designs are coveted by wealthy patrons. He praises your work, perhaps even offers you a slightly better meal or a less harsh sleeping mat. But every piece you create, every delicate brushstroke, every perfect curve is not truly yours. It is his property, his profit. The beauty you bring into the world serves only to enrich another. It's like being a Michelin star chef, but you never get to taste your own food, and you live in the pantry. Talk about artistic frustration, or perhaps your expertise lies in metalworking. You are a blacksmith, your muscles rippling as you wield the heavy hammer, shaping glowing iron over the anvil. The air in your workshop is thick with the scent of coal smoke, the tang of hot metal, and the sweat of exertion. Sparks dance in the dim light, illuminating the focused intensity in your eyes. You forge strong tools for farmers, intricate armor for soldiers, delicate jewelry for the elite. The clang of your hammer is a constant, rhythmic beat, a powerful sound that speaks of creation. Your master might showcase your strongest blades or your most ornate bronze helmets, boasting of his craftsman's prowess. You might even oversee other, less skilled enslaved people, teaching them the secrets of your trade. But still, the heat of the forge does not melt the chains of your bondage. You create instruments of war and beauty, yet you cannot choose your own path. Your hands, though skilled enough to shape metal, cannot break your own shackles. Maybe you are a scribe, a rare and highly valued enslaved person in a largely illiterate society. Your days are spent hunched over papyrus scrolls, your fingers stained with ink, your eyes tired from deciphering faded texts. You copy epic poems, philosophical treatises, legal documents, or administrative records. The silence of the master's library is broken only by the scratching of your stylus and the rustle of parchment. Your mind, though technically free to absorb the wisdom of the ages, remains trapped by the mundane task of transcription. Your value lies not in your understanding, but in your meticulous copying. You are a conduit for knowledge, but not a wielder of it. You read of great heroes, of democratic ideals, of men who shaped their own destinies, all while your own destiny is decided by the stroke of your master's pen on a bill of sale. Historians still debate the extent of literacy among enslaved scribes and how much personal knowledge they retained. But it's clear their intellectual prowess was primarily for their master's benefit. Even more uniquely, You could be an enslaved doctor, a physician whose knowledge of herbs, anatomy, and surgical procedures saves lives. Your touch, your wisdom, your quick thinking brings relief from pain, heals wounds, and sometimes even cheats death. Your master might lease you out to other wealthy families, earning him a significant income. You might even treat free citizens who would rely on your expertise. You are respected for your skill, perhaps even feared for your knowledge. But you remain property. The very lives you save are a testament to your ability, yet your own life is not your own to command. The paradox bites deepest here: to hold the power of life and death in your hands, yet to be utterly powerless over your own existence. Or perhaps your talent is in the arts, a musician whose lyre brings solace to a weary master, or a dancer whose movements grace a symposium. Your art is appreciated, your performance is applauded, but you are merely an entertainer, a living instrument. Your emotions are secondary to your performance, your personal joy or sorrow irrelevant to the audience. You are expected to conjure happiness, to inspire awe, regardless of the emptiness in your own heart. Your artistic spirit is bound, forced to perform on command, never truly free to express itself. The psychological toll of this existence is immense. You live with the constant irony of your situation creating beauty, wealth, or knowledge for others, while possessing none of it yourself. There's a quiet resentment that builds within you, a gnawing bitterness that slowly eats away at your spirit. You might find small, subtle ways to assert your limited autonomy. A hidden mark on a pot that only you recognize. A slight alteration in a copied text that subtly changes its meaning. A barely perceptible dissonance in a musical performance that only another enslaved musician would notice. These are tiny acts of rebellion, silent screams against your bondage, known only to you. It's a way to reclaim a sliver of yourself, to prove, if only to yourself, that your spirit is not entirely broken. It's like adding a hidden emoji to your boss's presentation, a secret rebellion that brings you a tiny, fleeting moment of satisfaction. Your master benefits immensely from your skill. A highly skilled enslaved artisan could be worth far more than a common laborer. Your labor could be rented out to other citizens or even to the state, bringing a steady stream of income to your owner. This financial incentive often meant that skilled enslaved people were treated slightly better than those in the mines or fields. They were valuable assets, and damaging them would mean a significant financial loss. You might receive better food, slightly more comfortable living quarters, and perhaps even some education to further hone your abilities. You might be allowed to travel with your master, or even to attend public events where your services are required, but these privileges are still at your master's whim, easily revoked, and they are never a path to true freedom. The concept of manumission, the act of gaining freedom, might glimmer tantalizingly for some skilled enslaved people. Your master might promise manumission after a certain number of years, or after you have earned him a specific amount of money. Some enslaved people were even allowed to save up small sums of money, their peculium, which they could eventually use to buy their own freedom. This was a rare, arduous, and often precarious path. Every extra hour you worked, every additional piece you crafted might be a step closer to this elusive goal. The hope, however faint, could be a powerful motivator, pushing you to endure the daily grind. Scholars still debate how common manumission was, and whether it was truly a benevolent act or another economic strategy by masters to incentivize productivity without relinquishing full control. Even in the most privileged positions, your life is still defined by your bondage. You are still property, your body and your talents owned by another. You cannot choose your own path, cannot decide where your skills are best applied, cannot build a legacy that is truly your own. The creative spirit, the drive to innovate, to master a craft, these innate human desires are twisted into tools for someone else's gain. You create beauty, but live in a world where your own humanity is denied. You are a testament to the incredible resilience of the human spirit, able to produce wonders even under the most oppressive conditions, but also a stark reminder of the profound injustice at the heart of such a society. The dynamic between you and your master is complex. He might express pride in your work, showcasing your creations as if they were his own genius. He might even consult you on technical matters, valuing your expertise. Yet, the moment you step out of line, the moment you question his authority, the power imbalance is brutally reasserted. A skilled slave who oversteps his bounds might find himself swiftly sold to the mines. A chilling reminder that your talent is a gift to your master, not to yourself. You are a valuable asset, but an asset nonetheless. You might even be tasked with training free apprentices, or other less skilled enslaved people. You, a bound individual, are imparting knowledge and skills that will allow others to live free lives, perhaps even to surpass you in social standing. This irony is not lost on you. You teach with precision, with patience, but inside, a quiet ache persists. You are building up others, steady, but your own foundations remain shackled. Your hands, capable of so much, remain bound to the will of another. This is the subtle cruelty of skilled servitude. Your very excellence serves to highlight your lack of freedom. You are a living testament to the fact that even the most profound talent, the most valuable expertise, could not, by itself, buy you freedom in ancient Greece. Your skill was a mark of your value, but not of your humanity in the eyes of the law. You've lived under the yoke of your master, whether toiling in fields, toiling in mines, or painstakingly crafting beauty with skilled hands. You've navigated the intricate web of ownership, the arbitrary whims of those who held your life in their hands. But what happens when the very laws and societal norms that underpin your bondage are brought into question? How do you exist, legally, when your very humanity is denied? And what avenues, however narrow, exist for you to seek justice or even a shred of freedom? Your legal standing is a paradox, a non-existence in a world obsessed with definitions. Legally, in ancient Greece, you are categorized as krema, or property. This is a fundamental, unchanging truth of your existence. You possess no independent legal identity. You cannot own property, initiate legal proceedings, or make contracts. Your master can buy you, sell you, rent you out, or bequeath you in his will, just like any other possession. If someone harms you, it is not considered an assault on a person, but rather damage to your master's property. Your master, therefore, would seek compensation for the damage to his asset, not for your suffering. This means that if you are beaten by a neighbor, your master might sue for the cost of your medical care or the loss of your labor. But you, the one experiencing the pain, have no voice in the matter. You are merely a silent object of legal dispute. It's like an ancient insurance claim. But your bodily integrity is just part of the deductible. Your testimony in court is also severely limited. While citizens could freely offer testimony, yours was often considered suspect, tainted by your status. In many cases, the testimony of enslaved people was only admissible if it was obtained under torture. This grim reality meant that your words, however truthful, held little weight unless extracted through agonizing pain. Imagine the horror being forced to endure unimaginable suffering just to have your truth, if it aligns with your master's interests, acknowledged. This practice highlights the profound distrust and dehumanization inherent in the system. You are believed only when your body is forced to yield. Historians still vigorously debate the frequency and legal implications of torturing enslaved people for testimony, with some arguing it was a last resort, while others point to its systemic application. But the brutal fact remains your truth was measured by your pain, despite your complete lack of legal rights. Certain societal conventions, and in some city-states like Athens, limited protections did exist, though these were always fragile and subject to interpretation. For example, while a master could theoretically kill you, doing so without cause might sometimes lead to social disapproval, or in some specific cases in Athens, even legal action, but only if it was deemed to disrupt public order or waste valuable property. There were no human rights as we understand them today. You were expected to be loyal, obedient, and productive. Any deviation from these expectations could result in severe punishment, often at your master's discretion. The boundaries of acceptable cruelty were vague, defined more by social custom than by strict legal codes. You have no right to a family, not in the legal sense. While enslaved people could form relationships and even have children, these unions were not legally recognized as marriages. Your children, as mentioned before, instantly became the property of your master, born into the same bondage. The emotional bonds you form are thus constantly precarious, threatened by the ever-present possibility of separation. Your master might sell off your spouse or your child at any moment, without your consent or recourse. This legal non-recognition of familial ties added another layer of profound emotional suffering to your existence, making even the most basic human connections a source of constant anxiety. Consider the irony again in a society that gave us the concept of citizenship and active participation in governance. You, as an enslaved person, are entirely excluded from the political process. You cannot vote, cannot serve in public office, cannot participate in the assembly, or even witness the debates. The grand pronouncements about liberty and democracy, about the rights and duties of citizens, ring hollow in your ears. You are the invisible foundation upon which their celebrated freedom stands. A silent workforce enabling the leisure and philosophical pursuits of the elite. You are in the city, but not of the city. Your life is political only in the sense that your forced labor directly supports the political system of free citizens. Even in death, your legal standing remains diminished. Your master decides your burial, your final resting place, and whether you receive any funerary rites. You might be buried in an unmarked grave, or alongside other enslaved people. Your existence barely acknowledged even in cessation. There are no grand monuments, no inscriptions celebrating your life or achievements, unless your master decides to commemorate your loyalty or skill on his own family tombstone, serving primarily as a testament to his generosity or wealth. Your legacy, if any, is erased. This legal void creates a pervasive sense of vulnerability. You are entirely dependent on your master's goodwill, or lack thereof. You learn quickly that speaking out, complaining, or resisting openly will only lead to harsher conditions or greater suffering. Your survival depends on your ability to conform, to obey, to become as invisible and uncomplaining as possible. You adopt a facade of compliance, a stoic mask to hide the simmering resentment and despair within. It's a psychological burden as heavy as any physical chain. The constant self-censorship, the suppression of your true thoughts and feelings, it becomes a part of your very being. There are also specific legal classifications that differentiate your bondage. If you were a helot in Sparta, for instance, your situation would be distinct from that of an enslaved person in Athens. Helots were a subjugated population, tied to the land, owned by the Spartan state rather than individual citizens. They lived in family units, cultivated plots of land, and provided a portion of their produce to their Spartan overlords. While they weren't individually bought and sold in the same way as chattel slaves, their lives were rigidly controlled, subject to state-sanctioned violence and periodic purges designed to instill fear and prevent rebellion. Their existence was a collective servitude, a stark contrast to the dispersed nature of slavery in other city-states. It's like comparing being a cog in a massive state-run machine versus being a tool in a private workshop. Both are property, but the scale of oppression differs. The state itself, as mentioned earlier, also owned many enslaved people who worked on public projects. These public slaves might be employed in building temples, roads, or port facilities, or even serving as police forces or administrative assistants. Their conditions might vary, potentially being less subject to individual masters' whims, but they remained enslaved, their labor serving the communal good of the free citizens. They were still bought and sold by the state, their movements and duties dictated by public officials. Your life, if you were a public slave, would be characterized by large-scale, often monumental construction. Your sweat and toil literally building the foundations of Greek civilization. Ultimately, your legal existence in ancient Greece is one of profound absence. You are a legal non-entity, a shadow in the bright light of a citizen's freedom. Your life is reduced to labor, your identity to property, and your future to the will of another. This fundamental injustice, woven into the very fabric of their society, is perhaps the most chilling aspect of being a slave in ancient Greece. You are a human being, with thoughts, feelings, and memories, but the world around you refuses to acknowledge that truth. You've explored the subtle and overt forms of resistance, the desperate flight for freedom, and the constant psychological toll of your bondage. But even within this system of profound oppression, there existed a glimmer of hope for some, the prospect of freedom. A taste of liberty that, though rare and often tenuous, could transform your life. This was the path to manumission, the act of gaining your freedom. Imagine the whispered stories among enslaved people, tales of those who had somehow, against all odds, managed to break free. These stories, often embellished with longing, served as both inspiration and a cruel reminder of how distant true liberty often felt. For you, the possibility of manumission might seem like a distant dream, a faint star in an endless night. Yet, it was a legal reality, albeit one entirely at your master's discretion. The most common way to achieve manumission was through purchase. This meant either you or someone on your behalf would buy your freedom from your master. But how would you, a person with no legal right to own property, acquire such a sum? This is where the concept of peculium comes into play. Your master might, as a form of incentive, allow you to keep a small portion of any earnings you made, or to engage in minor trade on the side, accumulating a meager sum over many years. Or, if you were a skilled artisan, your master might allow you to work for others for a fee, a portion of which you could keep. Imagine hoarding every drachma, every obol, a hidden stash of coins that represented not wealth, but a future. Every extra hour you worked, every additional piece you crafted, every penny you saved was a step closer to this elusive goal. The patience required for this was immense, the discipline unwavering. You'd live on the barest necessities, denying yourself even small comforts, all for that ultimate prize. It's like saving up for a down payment on a house, but the house is literally your own body. And the interest rates are, well, non-existent. But the cost is your entire past. Another pathway to freedom could be through your master's will. A benevolent, or perhaps simply pragmatic. Master might choose to grant you freedom upon his death. This could be a reward for exceptional loyalty, long service, or a recognition of your unique skills. Imagine the anxiety of waiting, hoping your master outlives you, or that he won't change his mind before his final breath. You would serve him diligently, anticipating his every need, perhaps even cultivating a relationship of genuine affection, all the while knowing your future hinges on his last wishes. The uncertainty would be a constant gnawing worry, a silent prayer that his intentions remained unchanged. Manumission could also be granted as a reward for extraordinary service. Perhaps you saved your master's life, or uncovered a conspiracy against him, or performed some heroic act that benefited the community. In times of war, cities sometimes promised freedom to enslaved individuals who fought bravely in their defense. Imagine picking up a weapon, not for your master's cause, but for the chance at your own liberty, fighting with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. Such acts were rare, but they created powerful narratives, showcasing the potential for heroic transformation, even within the bonds of servitude. However, even once manumitted, your life as a freed person, Apollutheros, was not entirely free. You would become a medic in Athenian society, a resident alien, subject to certain limitations. You would gain the right to own property, to marry legally, and your children would be born free. This newfound autonomy would be a profound relief, a sensation of breath you hadn't realized you were holding. but you would still owe a lifelong obligation to your former master, now your patron. This might involve continuing to perform certain services for him, or offering financial assistance when needed. You would also be required to pay a special tax, the metoikion, as a resident alien. Failing to pay this tax could result in re-enslavement. Your freedom was real, yes, but it came with strings attached, a constant reminder of your past. You would also face social prejudices. Despite your newfound legal freedom, the stigma of slavery would often cling to you. You might find it difficult to gain full acceptance in society, particularly among the elite. Certain professions might remain closed to you, and your social interactions might be limited. You would live in a gray area, no longer a slave, but not quite a full citizen. Your children, however, if born after your manumission, would be free from these direct ties, offering the promise of a truly unfettered future for your lineage. Historians still debate the extent of social integration for freed slaves. Some sources suggest considerable upward mobility was possible, while others emphasize the enduring social stigma, making your post-manumission social climb a historically nuanced challenge. The act of manumission itself was often a public affair, performed before witnesses, or even formalized at a religious sanctuary. A master might dedicate you to a deity, symbolically selling you to the god in exchange for money, effectively freeing you while satisfying a religious obligation. Imagine standing before a temple, the priest intoning ancient words, the sunlight streaming through the columns, as your master pronounces you free. It would be a moment of overwhelming emotion, a release of years of pent-up hope and despair. For women, manumission offered independence from direct ownership, but societal expectations still largely confined them to the domestic sphere. A freed woman might become a laundress, a market vendor, or continue in some form of skilled domestic labor, but always under the watchful eye of society. They gained personal autonomy but often remained economically vulnerable. The path to freedom was not a sudden burst of sunlight, but a gradual dawn. It required immense patience, shrewdness, and often a stroke of luck. It was a testament to the enduring human spirit's yearning for liberty, even when the odds were stacked impossibly high. You had to navigate a complex legal landscape, a treacherous social terrain, and the ever-present shadow of your former bondage. But for those who achieved it, that taste of liberty, however limited, was worth every sacrifice, every hidden coin, every whispered prayer. It was the ultimate prize, transforming a life of quiet despair into one of fragile, hard-won hope. You've experienced the arduous path to manumission, the tantalizing taste of conditional freedom. Now, a step back and observe the grand paradox of ancient Greek society, a contradiction so stark it would make your head spin if you weren't so accustomed to its inherent injustices. How could a civilization that birthed democracy, celebrated individual liberty, and produced some of the world's most profound philosophical texts on freedom, simultaneously thrive on the brutal foundation of widespread human bondage? This is the core hypocrisy that permeates every aspect of your existence, whether you are free or still enslaved, a muffled drumbeat beneath the harmonious melodies of their intellectual pursuits. Imagine the bustling agora of Athens, the heart of the city's civic life. You, as an enslaved person, might be carrying heavy sacks of grain, or serving wine to a group of citizens debating heatedly. They speak of isonomia, equality before the law, and isagoria, equal right to speak in the assembly. They wax lyrical about the glories of self-governance, about the importance of civic participation, about the fundamental difference between the free Greek and the barbarian despot. Meanwhile, your feet ache, your back is sore, and your very body is someone else's property. The words float through the air, detached from your reality, a cruel, mocking symphony of freedom you can never truly join. You are in the very cradle of democracy, yet you are utterly excluded from its embrace. It's like being at a 5-star buffet, but you're the table. This isn't a small-scale anomaly. Slavery is deeply woven into the economic and social fabric of ancient Greece. It's not just about labor, It's about leisure. The leisure that allowed citizens to engage in philosophy, politics, art, and athletics was directly enabled by your forced labor. Who tilled the fields that fed them? Who worked the mines that provided their silver and iron? Who built the magnificent temples and public buildings that adorned their cities? Who cooked their meals, cleaned their homes, and tutored their children? You did. Your unseen, unacknowledged toil underpinned their entire civilization. Without you, their democracy, their philosophy, their art would simply crumble. This stark dependency is a truth rarely acknowledged in their public discourse, but profoundly felt by you. Philosophers like Aristotle that, surprisingly, even rationalized slavery, viewing some people as natural slaves, born to be ruled, just as the body rules the soul. He argued that it was beneficial for both master and slave, though you, with your calloused hands and weary spirit, would beg to differ. Plato, too, envisioned an ideal state where certain roles, including those of manual labor, would be filled by a distinct class of individuals, blurring the lines with servitude. These intellectual justifications, coming from the very minds celebrated for their pursuit of truth, demonstrate the deep-seated nature of this societal blind spot. You, the enslaved, are proof that even the brightest minds can build grand theories upon morally shaky ground. It's truly wild to think that the same guys who basically invented logic were also like, yeah, some people are just born to fetch me grapes. The scale of slavery varied by city-state. In Athens, it's estimated that enslaved individuals made up a significant portion, possibly even a third or more, of the total population. In Sparta, the Helots, as you know, were an even larger state-owned population whose subjugation was central to the Spartan military-focused society. This pervasive presence meant that every citizen, no matter how humble, likely interacted with enslaved people daily, often owning at least one or two household slaves. Slavery wasn't a fringe institution, it was ubiquitous, an undeniable part of everyday life. Your very presence highlights the social stratification. There are the full citizens, the politei, who hold all the power and enjoy all the freedoms. Then there are the medics, the resident aliens, who are free but lack political rights. And then there are you, the douloi, the enslaved, who are outside the legal and social framework entirely. Your lack of freedom defines you in their eyes, a permanent mark of your inferior status. Even freed people, the apolutheroi, still carried the stigma of their past, forever tethered by their obligations to their former masters. The concept of upward mobility, of truly shedding the past, was a lifelong struggle, often only achievable over generations. Economically, your labor was a critical engine. Enslaved people were used in every sector: agriculture, mining, manufacturing, domestic service, and even public works. They built temples, roads, and ships. They produced pottery, textiles, and weapons. They farmed the land that fed the cities. The wealth and prosperity of many Greek cities, particularly Athens, were inextricably linked to the exploitation of enslaved labor. Without this vast workforce, the economy would grind to a halt. This economic dependency made the abolition of slavery an almost unthinkable proposition for the ancient Greeks, even for those who might have harbored private doubts about its morality. They simply couldn't imagine a functioning society without it. The contradiction extends even to their military might. While free citizens formed the core of the hoplite armies, enslaved people often accompanied their masters to war as attendants, or were sometimes even pressed into service as rowers in the navy. In times of extreme crisis, some city-states even armed enslaved individuals, promising freedom in exchange for bravery in battle, as you might recall. This desperate measure highlights their dependence on you, even in their most vital endeavors. Yet, once the crisis passed, the promises were often forgotten, or fulfilled only begrudgingly. This deeply embedded paradox meant that Greek society, despite its intellectual brilliance, never truly resolved the fundamental tension between its democratic ideals and the reality of human bondage. Academics still hotly debate whether Greek philosophers truly considered the implications of their ideas on those they enslaved, or if their conception of humanity simply excluded the bound entirely. This is not just a historical curiosity, it's a profound question about the nature of freedom itself, and how easily societies can rationalize the oppression of others when it serves their economic or social convenience. You, the enslaved, are a living, breathing testament to this enduring human failing, a silent challenge to their claims of enlightened civilization. Your unseen tears, your unheard groans, are the true counter-narrative to their glorious history. You've witnessed the intricate, often brutal, mechanics of ancient Greek slavery, from your origins in bondage to the tantalizing, yet conditional, path to freedom. You've seen the grand paradox of a democratic society built on human property. Now, as our journey through this shadowed history draws to a close, we must consider the enduring burden, the psychological scars that run deeper than any chain, even for those who manage to taste liberty. The echoes of bondage, even when hidden, reverberated through generations, shaping lives in ways that mere legal status could never fully erase. Imagine yourself, now a freed person, perhaps after decades of silent toil. The physical chains are gone, but invisible ones remain. You walk the streets, free to choose your path, yet you carry the memory of always being watched, of constantly anticipating a master's whim. Your body, though no longer owned, still remembers the ache of relentless labor, the sting of the whip, or the suffocating dust of the mines. These are not merely memories, they are etched into your very being, influencing how you move, how you interact with others, how you perceive the world. You might flinch at loud noises, avoid direct eye contact, or instinctively defer to those who seem powerful, even if they hold no authority over you. These are the subtle, persistent ghosts of your past. It's like trying to get rid of a particularly stubborn tune stuck in your head, but it's a tune made of trauma and servitude, and it plays on a loop. The stigma of slavery, as we touched upon earlier, was a heavy cloak. Even as a freed person, you might find that doors remain closed to you. A former master might still spread rumors, or influential citizens might simply refuse to do business with you, or allow their children to marry yours. Society, particularly the elite, might view your newfound freedom with suspicion, questioning your loyalty or your inherent character. You might have gained legal autonomy, but social acceptance remained an uphill battle, a slow, arduous climb. Your children, born free, might still face prejudice due to your past status, a bitter inheritance you desperately try to shield them from. This lasting social burden highlights that formal manumission was often just the first step on a much longer journey towards true integration and respect. Economically, the challenges were immense. You had to carve out a living in a world that offered few advantages. Perhaps you continue to work in your former master's trade, now as a paid laborer, but facing competition from other free workers and often earning less. You might start a small business, perhaps as a potter or a laundress, but without inherited capital or established networks. Success would be hard-won. The lack of prior education, or the societal limitations on certain professions for those of your background, created significant barriers to upward mobility. You learned to be resourceful, resilient, and utterly self-reliant, for there was no safety net to catch you if you stumbled. The psychological scars were arguably the deepest. Years of suppressing your emotions, of being denied agency, of constant fear and dehumanization, would leave an indelible mark. You might struggle with trust, finding it difficult to truly open up to others, even to loved ones. The deep-seated trauma of separation from family members sold away, or the constant threat of violence now would linger, manifesting as anxiety, nightmares, or a profound sense of isolation even when surrounded by people. You might find solace in quiet routines, in the simple act of self-sufficiency, deriving a quiet dignity from your hard-won independence. Academics still hotly debate the precise psychological effects of ancient slavery, as direct accounts are scarce, though, but it's clear the trauma would have been profound and long-lasting. A silent epidemic beneath the celebrated facade of ancient life. For generations, the memory of bondage would be passed down, not through written histories, but through whispered stories, through the way a grandparent carried themselves, through the subtle warnings ingrained in childhood. You would teach your children to value their freedom above all else, to work hard, and to be vigilant against those who would seek to strip them of their dignity. The stories of your ancestors, of their resilience and their suffering, would become a part of your family's oral tradition. A powerful reminder of where you came from and the battles fought for the simple right to be free. The enduring paradox of ancient Greek society is that, even as it celebrated the freedom of its citizens, it created a vast, silent underclass whose very existence served as a constant, if unacknowledged, reminder of the fragility and selectivity of that freedom. The democracy of Athens, the military might of Sparta, the philosophical achievements, the grand architectural wonders, all were built, in part, on the backs of millions of people who had no voice, no rights, and no choice. It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? That even the most brilliant civilizations can harbor the deepest moral blind spots, and that true progress often comes not just from grand ideas, but from recognizing the humanity in every single individual, regardless of their status or origin. Your story, though one of hardship and silence, is a vital part of their history, a counter-narrative that continues to resonate through time, reminding us of the enduring human spirit and the relentless pursuit of liberty. The echoes of your groans, your tears, and your quiet defiance are still there. If you listen closely, a haunting melody beneath the classical harmonies. And with that, our journey into the shadowed lives of ancient Greek slaves comes to a peaceful close. The sun sets on dusty roads and silent fields, carrying with it the whispers of forgotten stories. Take a moment to let the images fade, the sounds soften, and the harsh realities of another time gently recede. Allow your mind to drift from ancient shackles to the warmth of your own bed, your own blankets, your own freedom. Feel the quiet hum of your own space, your own time, your own peace. Remember, even in the stillness of history, there are lessons that illuminate our present, reminding us of the enduring human spirit. Let the stillness embrace you now, and find comfort in the quiet.